nurture it. Thank you.
Do you have some time?
Yeah, absolutely. Questions. Please identify yourselves. Tell me what you do, because we have many here who are from all walks of life. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask all kinds of questions you have. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Gary Smith. I'm a retired business executive and active in one of your centers, the Center for Study of Sport Society.
Great center.
My question is about the globalization of education related to mergers with educational institutions in other countries. You touched briefly on partnerships, but have there been any mergers, and is there talk of mergers? Because when business wants to expand in other countries, very often sometimes it starts its own entity in another country, but very often it merges with an entity in another country.
Yeah, it's a great question. You all heard the question, you know, do we have mergers and acquisitions? Let's start by talking about it at home. Unfortunately, the small colleges are facing many challenges, and some of them are folding, and some of them are being bought. So the mergers and acquisitions are happening as we speak in the United States, in our country, and the for-profits are buying. For-profits, that's a new phenomenon that didn't exist. They are buying there. Now, when you go overseas, sometimes, you know, you have two options, as you said. Either you start something de novo, from scratch, or you merge, or you buy. Now, the most important challenge that, you know, those who want to establish themselves overseas face are the regulations. So you cannot start, for instance, in China or even in India or in Turkey, a campus, unless you are with a local entity. So we are seeing those partnerships that are very close to mergers or acquisitions, but preserving the idea that those places are, you know, local, indigenous. So yes, it's happening. And it's happening in different forms. Sometimes very public and sometimes not public, saying it's a partnership rather than a merger. But frankly, you know, research universities have not gone this route of mergers. Partnerships, yes. Why? Because you have a lot of baggage. You know, when we come, our university system in the United States is not based on seniority, but it's based on meritocracy. So you have a young professor who tomorrow morning, with a big discovery and a big achievement, can become a full professor. In many places, in Europe, in Latin America, in Asia, this is not the case. It's, you know, it's seniority. How many years have you been there? Have you been in your job? We can't afford this system. That's why we shy away from the merger and acquisition you mentioned. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yes?
I'm Mike Crawford. I graduated MBA from Northeastern.
MBA means the Executive MBA program.
The reverse brain drain you were talking about, when you see people going back to India and going back to China, they're still coming here for their education and then returning. Do you see that changing over the years where they're not going to be coming here for that education, but they'll be, you know, in their own country and staying there from the beginning and not coming here at all?
Yeah, you're reading in the press about the reverse brain drain, and also you have examples after examples. I mean, so. But let me tell you where it is today. I'm not talking about the future. It's very difficult to go back to in China or in India or in Singapore is a good example too. It's a different example because it's not the reverse brain drain. Singapore is trying to recruit some of our faculty in the United States. See, if you are used to a performing university system like the one in the United States, you know, you don't ask for permission. You're an entrepreneur as a faculty. You know, you raise funds from contracts, from grants. You don't care about the political aspect of, you know, the chair of your department, etc. You are here to really succeed. And you are an innovator. If you go back to a place and they start telling you, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, it's very difficult to survive. So, yes, we have examples of people, very distinguished people going back. You know, the example last week was a Howard Hughes person going back, you know, Howard Hughes, medical researcher or researcher going back, you know, to China. They created a bubble for him. But you see, you know, that's a good example, and you have Nobel Prize winners going back. But the question is, you know, is it sustainable not only for them? For them, they have an empire. They'll be able to sustain themselves. But is it sustainable for the system? Don't forget, our system is performing because it's a meritocracy, which means that in private universities, you know, you and I may be in, you know, may have started at the same time, but we would be, as faculty, paid differently. What's the difference? Is that you achieved more than I achieved. In Europe, this is not possible. Continental Europe, extremely difficult, not possible. In Asia, it's very difficult. They're trying to get away from that. Latin America. So if you ask me, do we have examples? Yes. Is it sustainable at this point? No. You have to change the system totally. Do we have to be aware that the pressure is real? Yes. At some point, somebody is going to start systems that are exactly like ours. And that's where the real challenge is. It's going to happen. Actually, there are discussions. I'm aware of that. There are discussions in Asia about starting systems exactly like ours, where you don't care that the person has been around for 15 years. So yes, we have to be aware at the general level, not at this point, no, but once they start getting into that, yes. Yes, sir.
My name is Gerard Badler. I'm associated with a company that develops retirement communities on or near college campuses. Over the last few years, a tremendous amount of foreign capital has come into the United States, as we know, that went into an unproductive housing bubble and lending for consumer goods and so forth. And I wonder, why couldn't the universities, which are being threatened by tax issues, as you say, create a system where more of that foreign as well as domestic capital would be attracted to investments in colleges and universities, perhaps by giving up the tax-exempt status, becoming corporations with shareholders, so that you could provide an economic incentive for capital to come into these.
Did you all hear the question? No. Okay, let me repeat it. Let me repeat it, and let me actually repeat it in the following way. So, if you violently disagree with my interpretation, please do that. Essentially, the question is, why is it the case that you don't avail yourself when, you know, on the open market, there is a lot of capital. Just bring private capital and inject it into your system, even if it means that you don't become not-for-profit, and that you lose your not-for-profit status. Actually, it is happening as we speak with the for-profits. There are for-profits. For instance, the Washington Post company has a for-profit called Kaplan. Who invests in it? Warren Buffett is an investor in it. And they are doing exactly that. Similarly, you have a company that is called L'Oreal. You know, same thing. You have investors, including universities, that have very large endowments invested there. However, let me mention something. Here at Northeastern, we have 34,000 applications and we take 2,800 students. You know, if you ask me, let me repeat that, 34,000 applications for 2,800 students. If I want to do something for profit, you know what I do? I take the 34,000 students. But here, what we have been doing is actually shrinking, believe it or not. 10 years ago, we used to take double. We shrank that. Why? Because we are the fastest growing university in the United States. Based on what? On quality. So, the question that you're raising is a good question. I cannot allow it to invade the educational aspect. The other aspect that is dangerous is if you tell me the tuition in private universities is high, and the answer is, frankly, overnight, I can cut 35% of the tuition. Let me repeat that. Overnight, next year, as a president of this university, I can cut 35% of the tuition. Enormous decrease, correct? What will happen? I will not give access. I will not give scholarships. I will not give student aid. The 35% goes to student aid. We are in Boston. You know that we graduate more students, we, Northeastern, from the Boston Public School than any other university. We are a private university. We graduate more students from the Boston Public Schools systems than any other university, including UMass. And every year, we inject $10 million to support these students, only these students. So if I start going into the for-profit, forget it. The American dream has been based on access and promotion. How many students started with a silver spoon? Very few. And it's getting fewer and fewer. The middle class is challenged. Can we go for profits? Absolutely. Will the social cost be high? Enormous. That's why I don't want to do it. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
My name's Evan. I'm an undergraduate economics major here.
Are you a senior?
No, I'm a sophomore.
So he studies economics, undergrad.
Okay.
If you speak up a little bit.
Okay, my question
Here,
has...
Evan,
Yeah.
use this.
Thank you. My question has to do with government subsidies. You talked about Sarkozy's subsidies in France and China's enormous subsidies to their...
They are not subsidies. They are investments.
Okay.
There is a big difference. We have economists here. They will explain the difference.
My question is, do you think that, especially in Western Europe, do you think that investments like these, you're just talking about the meritocracy and how that makes American higher education stronger. Do you think that those investments, that the European universities' dependence, because that's what it is, it's a dependence on government, limits their ability to be more dynamic?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me repeat it. The question is, do I think that the investments, the investments by the governments limit the ability to be performing? And the answer, let me start by saying that the subsidies or the investments, or however you want to characterize them, they are not limiting. They can be actually very, very empowering. Let me talk about the United States. We have enormous investments from the National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, etc. We benefit from that. You know, the labs, if you visit our nano center, we have a National Center for Nanotechnology. You know, this center has received so far only from NSF $25 million. You know, we are this leadership is enormous, so it empowers us and allows us to do more. Without that, we can't. How the difference is what the structure is, what the structure of the university is. Europe is based on seniority so far, and frankly, it's based, and they're trying to change that. And you know, and your question is very well taken. Namely, I can rephrase it in the following way: why is it the case that their system is not as performing? It's not because of the subsidies, but because the system is not an entrepreneurial system. It's not a meritocracy, if you want. Is it going to change? There are enormous pressures. Is it going to change overnight? No. That's why your question about the reverse brain drain leads me to say that it's not going to happen at a full-fledged level now. But if we keep shrinking and challenging the universities, what's happening in public higher education is a disaster in the United States. We have systems like the UC system in California. We have systems like the Urbana system, the Chicago system. And they are, shrinking it. Those are great systems. That's a danger. When we have this diversity of small colleges and they're going under, that's a challenge. But to go back to your question, no, I don't believe that it's the investments, because we receive investments. It's the way you are, we do everything based on competition here.
Let's see if we can't take this back and make it a little easier for people.
Hi there, my name's Josh Gregory, I'm from TI Craft, and I just have a quick question about the distinction
Do
you made.
you all know what the IA craft is? Okay.
Just a question about the distinction between international and global. And can you talk as an administrator a little bit about your apprehension about becoming a global institution versus an international institution?
I personally believe that we should become global. So I don't have an apprehension about becoming global. I have more an apprehension about becoming international. So being there, going there, and just not paying attention to the needs of the place or what's interest, or what is of interest, not only to the place but also to our students, see when they rotate. So from this perspective, I have my trepidation is to be, what's happening when places are saying we don't want American campuses because they don't fulfill our needs. That's a backlash that I was mentioning. And we are seeing that. I mentioned an example, I can mention other examples. That is not good. It will affect our standing, it will affect, the fact that we have the best brand in the world in terms of higher education. So it's the global part that is good, because that will have a relevance not only for us but for the countries there. But the international worries me. Yes, sir.
I'm Franco. I'm an undergraduate economics major here. My question was about, you were talking about how Hopkins got kicked out of Singapore, and you also just spoke about the backlash.
I didn't use this term. You used this term. They were asked to leave.
Okay, they were asked to leave Singapore.
Yes.
And you also mentioned about the similarities between the campuses, the international campuses and the campus in the United States, how they're just basically copies of the United States campus. And I can't help but think how culture plays into it. And so I was wondering how you sort of tailor the education system, I guess, to something that probably suits better to that location.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I just mentioned in my previous answer and during my presentation. That I give you the example, for instance, of the dean of the business school when he wanted to set up a partnership in the Gulf. I said, wait a second, what's in it for us? What's in it for them? And he came back with a program saying, we can look at the two systems of Western entrepreneurship, Islamic entrepreneurship. That was great. Okay, that's what's a value added. And each time, you have to really be in the listening mode and build it together with respect to what's happening, with respect to the needs there. So it's not an answer that is given once for all, that you have to discover the answer every time. I like your t-shirt, Superman.
Mr. President, could you take a question?
One question. Let me tell you why I have to leave. I apologize. I was invited, that's very interesting, by the Consul General of France to meet with a group to discuss precisely what's the best way to use this investment of $35 billion Why, that's fascinating. Yes?
So you're gonna give away trade secrets tonight?
No.
Is that-
Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Actually, the open system means that we don't have trade secrets. And it's very difficult to duplicate our system because it's completely open and completely based on meritocracy. I studied there, and I can tell you very briefly, when I finished here from my PhD, I was offered 2 jobs in France. Great jobs. I decided not to go back. I went there for a semester and I said, no, nada, no. And stayed in the United States because of that. And this is why people, frankly, I benefited tremendously from that. In 3 years, I got my tenure. There, I would have waited 15 years. I became, I was accelerated constantly. Why? Because it's, productivity. That's all. Yes?
Ruth Rios.
What do you do?
I do international consulting.
In education?
Actually in compensation and benefits.
I see.
But I wanted to add to the gentleman from TIA Craft, because I think what he was asking is the difference between being international and being global. He's talking about control. Because I know when I watch industry, when I watch companies who are international versus being global, that's what they get hung up on. If they're international, they're very concerned about headquarters controlling it. And the real difference with being global is that the cream rises to the top and you don't care where the hell it comes from. And
That's a
that's
great,
a very hard thing to do.
yeah. Is this what you had in mind? That's good. Okay. So let me answer. The question is a question of control. If you really are global and you have systems all over, that, the question is who's controlling that, correct?
Right.
Let me tell you, that's what happens in universities on a daily basis. You think no, but I'm serious. Do you think I control the university? Do you think the president controls the university? Think again. Do you think the deans control the university? Think again. The chairs? Think again. Ask my colleagues. So what happens? How come we are a university? You define a very strong mission. You define the values of the place. You define a strategic plan at a higher level and let people walk and drive and do research and study within these confines. If you want a notion of control, you cannot be in a university setting. So we know how to do it. We have been doing it. That's why we're much better positioned than the command and control structure. We do it on a daily basis. Every day I'm surprised by an idea or a possibility or a direction that we didn't foresee. So the command and control system is not part of higher education in the United States. And that's why it positions us, and it's a great question, thank you for raising it, positions us extremely well in this global foray.
Well, Mr. President, I want to thank you on behalf of Professor Dickens